In this video, we're looking at a case that has stayed with everyone involved. It's a story with a lot of twists, unanswered questions, and details that still don't sit right, even years later. Angela Pritchard was born on April 14, 1967, in Dubuque, Iowa. Her parents, Barbara and William Odafe, raised a close-knit family. Angela was one of 5 children, and growing up, everyone mattered. That sense of care and connection shaped who she became. From a young age, Angela was known for being kind and thoughtful. That never really changed. As an adult, she was a devoted mother to her 2 sons, Joshua Close and Colton C.J. Hancock, and later a proud grandmother to 6 grandchildren who meant everything to her. Her family often said she was beautiful inside and out, and that she went out of her way to make people feel loved. She had a soft spot for her grandkids and loved to spoil them. CJ later shared that Angela still hung homemade ornaments on her Christmas tree, decorations her kids had made decades earlier. She held on to memories like that and took pride in every milestone, big or small. After years of focusing on raising her family, Angela found work that truly felt right to her at Mississippi Ridge Boarding Kennels. The business was owned by Jim and Nancy Kettman, who eventually trusted Angela enough to lease it to her and let her run it herself. Jim Kettman later said in court she was exactly what we were looking for. Angela put the same energy into her job that she put into everything else. For her, it wasn't just about showing up for work. She wanted to make sure pets were cared for, comforted, and treated like they were her own, while their owners were away. Around this time, Angela met Christopher Pritchard. She was trying to rebuild her life and figure out what the next chapter should look like. Chris had worked as a plumber in Bellevue for years and came across as steady and reliable. Angela's sister, Wendy Butta, and Wendy's husband, Jim, had known Christopher for a long time and trusted him. Wendy later said he was someone she would have felt comfortable leaving her kids with. She described him as nice, honest, hardworking, and easy to be around. Angela and Chris married in March of 2019, after about 2 years together. On the surface, it seemed like a solid pairing, a hardworking tradesman and a woman who devoted her life to family and animals. But over time, things would begin to change in ways no one expected. At first, Christopher seemed like exactly what Angela needed. He had steady work, people respected him, and from the outside, it looked like he genuinely cared about her. After they got married, life appeared pretty routine. Angela continued running the kennel, and Christopher focused on his electrician business. But what they showed the world wasn't the full picture. According to court records and witness testimony, Christopher had a past that raised serious concerns. In November 2019, he was charged with first-degree theft. Police released him on bail, and over the next 4 years, the case was continued more than 30 times. Those delays meant he never had to face the charges in any meaningful way. In a later lawsuit, Angela's family said those continuances kept Christopher out of custody and, in their view, gave him the freedom and the confidence to repeatedly abuse and assault Angela Pritchard. By the spring of 2022, the relationship had clearly changed. Angela's sister, Wendy Butta, noticed it almost immediately. She said Christopher wasn't the same person anymore. He was angry, easily set off. The shift was obvious. Angela herself became more anxious, more fearful, and constantly on edge. Wendy would later testify about these changes in Christopher's case. Arguments that once seemed minor started escalating. Christopher grew increasingly controlling and possessive, and his anger became harder to predict. Angela tried to leave the relationship, but like many people in abusive situations, she found herself trapped in a cycle that was difficult to break. The woman who had spent her life caring for others was now living in fear, and documenting it the only way she knew how. Angela had always been organized. Wendy remembered how she used sticky notes for everything. But these weren't reminders or grocery lists. What Angela wrote down was far more disturbing. On brightly colored notes, she recorded Christopher's growing rage and her own fear as the abuse continued. One note, written shortly before her death, makes that fear unmistakably clear. She wrote that she believed Chris was capable of anything, that he said going to jail wouldn't matter, that he had placed guns throughout the 2nd floor of their home in 3 different rooms. These weren't exaggerations or dramatic statements. They were the words of a woman who was terrified, and who understood that her life was in danger. Angela eventually learned that Christopher had placed several guns throughout their house. Knowing they were there was terrifying. It wasn't subtle, and it wasn't accidental. It was a constant reminder of what he was capable of. As time went on, Christopher's behavior became more erratic and more dangerous. Angela reached a breaking point. Enough was enough. She told her sister, Wendy Buddy, "We're not living in the same house." That decision took real courage. Angela left Christopher and moved in with Wendy, hoping it would finally give her some sense of safety. But leaving an abusive relationship is often the most dangerous moment, and Christopher was not willing to let go. What followed was months of threats, harassment, and stalking. Angela asked for help again and again, but the systems meant to protect her failed her repeatedly. On April 18, 2022, the situation escalated. Angela's family called the police after another violent incident. When officers arrived, Angela was crying and shaking. She had a visible mark on her face. Body camera footage captured her telling an officer, "He hit me, and I just went inside." Then she said it again, overwhelmed and terrified. "You have no idea what I go through every day with him. You have no idea." Christopher was charged with domestic violence and ordered not to have any contact with Angela. But that order didn't stop what came next. Angela continued reaching out for help, and Christopher continued breaking the law. Over the next few months, Angela discovered hidden cameras inside her home and a tracking device placed on her Jeep. These were clear violations of Iowa laws related to stalking and invasion of privacy. According to the lawsuit filed by her family, the Bellevue Police Department refused to take action, even after Angela reported what she had found. Christopher's behavior only escalated. On August 23, 2022, he sent Angela a threatening text message. "It's going to get real ugly." 5 days later, he told her he planned to ruin her business. Angela later said that each time she reported these violations, police did nothing. On September 1, 2022, a temporary protection order was issued. It should have created distance. It should have been a line the law enforced. Instead, Christopher ignored it. And according to Angela's family, law enforcement continued to look the other way, leaving her exposed and unprotected. What should have been a straightforward matter of enforcing the law became a painful example of how the system can fail people trying to escape abuse. In the 13 days after the restraining order was issued, Angela reported at least 9 alleged violations to the Bellevue Police Department. Christopher drove past her home repeatedly, at one point 6 times within an hour. He showed up at her workplace under the excuse of mowing the lawn. He approached her at a gas station and stared at her in a way that left her shaken and afraid. Angela also told police that Christopher had broken into her home, caused damage, locked the doors, and shut off the utilities. Officers reportedly believed he had violated the restraining order, but no arrest was made. When Angela contacted Bellevue Police Chief Dennis Schroeder directly to report these violations, she said he refused to enforce the order and told her to contact a lawyer instead. Later, the department's inaction was linked to Christopher's personal connections within the police force. In the lawsuit filed by Angela's family, they claim Christopher had a personal relationship with at least one city police officer and had provided officers with free or discounted electrical work. According to the lawsuit, these relationships led Christopher to believe he could ignore court orders without consequences. The filing also alleges that police behavior reinforced that belief, sending the message that his actions would be tolerated. Christopher was finally arrested on September 15, 2022, for violating the restraining order. He spent just one night in jail before being released. After that, he failed to appear for court dates and did not turn himself in to serve a 6-day sentence for the violations. A warrant for his arrest was issued on September 30, 2022. In an email sent 9 days before Angela was killed, the Jackson County attorney informed the Bellevue Police Department that Christopher had 24 hours to turn himself in. If he failed to do so, a warrant would be requested. Despite that warning, the order was never served. In a small town like Bellevue, there appeared to be little effort to locate him. As the danger grew, Angela moved in with her sister, Wendy Buddy, hoping to stay safe. But even then, the fear followed her. Christopher made it clear he wasn't going anywhere. "You have a shadow now," he told her, "because I'm not going. You're stuck with me." Wendy Buddy tried to protect her sister in ways the legal system hadn't been able to, but Christopher still knew Angela's routine. He knew where she worked. He knew when she arrived. On the evening of October 7th, 2022, Christopher prepared himself. He went to the barn owned by family friends Lori and Mike Blazer, just a few miles from Mississippi Ridge. He left them a note and parked a borrowed white pickup truck in their garage. The note said the keys were inside and that he'd gone shooting, a simple explanation that gave him cover and time. Later that night, Christopher left the barn and walked through the trees carrying a 20-gauge shotgun. Surveillance cameras at the kennel would later help investigators piece together his movements. In the footage, dogs can be heard barking in the distance. Iowa Department of Criminal Investigation Special Agent Dustin Henningsen would later explain that those sounds likely marked the moment Christopher arrived at the kennels. Christopher knew the layout well. He had helped Angela run the business and understood how to get inside without drawing attention. He waited in the dark for nearly 4 hours, surrounded by the animals Angela cared for every day, lying in wait for her to arrive. At 7:34 a.m. on October 8, 2022, Angela pulled into the parking lot at Mississippi Ridge Boarding Kennels. Security cameras recorded her getting out of her car, gathering her belongings, and walking toward the door. She was dressed for work, ready to start her morning routine, just like she had so many times before. Agent Henningsen later described watching the footage again. "You see her pull up at 7:34, he said. She gets out of her car, gathers her things, and walks into the kennel. Moments later, Christopher stepped out of hiding with the shotgun as Angela entered the building to begin her day. She immediately realized she was in danger and tried to call 911. That call became one of the most important pieces of evidence in the case. It captured critical details and gave Angela the chance to identify the person attacking her. At 7:39:43 a.m., Mississippi Ridge Boarding Kennels became a crime scene, and the 911 call placed at that moment would later help investigators understand exactly what happened. On the 911 call, you can hear Angela pleading with her estranged husband. Her voice is shaking. She's scared and she's trying to reason with him. "Leave right now," she says. "I have people coming in, please leave." And then, just moments before she's killed, she names the person standing in front of her. "Will you please get out of here, Chris?" Almost immediately after that, a gunshot is heard. It's captured on the 911 recording. The medical examiner later confirmed that Angela Pritchard was shot once in the center of her chest and died instantly. Iowa DCI agent Dustin Henningsen would later say that listening to the call is incredibly difficult. "You're hearing the end of her life," he explained. On a personal level, it's not something that's easy to hear. Angela's final word, "Chris," became the key detail that opened the case. Those were the last words she ever spoke, and they were also the first clear piece of information pointing investigators to her killer. After shooting Angela, Christopher took her cell phone and fled. He left her behind, a woman who had spent her life caring for others, lying among the animals she worked with and loved every day. When officers arrived at Mississippi Ridge Boarding Kennels, the scene spoke for itself. Angela had been shot in the chest and was pronounced dead at the scene. The dogs in the kennel were still nearby, having witnessed the violence. Dozens of officers from 6 different agencies responded, though only a few body cameras captured what happened next. Because of the seriousness of the case, the Bellevue Police Department asked the Iowa Department of Criminal Investigation to take over. DCI agents Ryan Kedley and Dustin Henningsen were assigned to lead the investigation. While Angela's family was certain Christopher was responsible, investigators still had to build a case that could stand up in court. The 911 call was the first critical piece of evidence, but it wasn't enough on its own. Investigators reviewed surveillance footage from the kennel and surrounding areas. The video helped establish the timeline and showed that Christopher had been waiting for hours before Angela arrived. The evidence also pointed to someone who knew her routine well. Agent Kedley later noted that the level of planning and familiarity suggested the attacker knew exactly where Angela would be and when. At the same time, Investigators were piecing this together. The search for Christopher was already underway. After killing Angela, Christopher disappeared into the Iowa woods. After the killing, hundreds of officers searched farms, wooded areas, and nearby neighborhoods. As Agent Ryan Kedley put it, they were dealing with a fugitive who was on the run and potentially armed. Police teams went door to door, checking houses, barns, and outbuildings, trying to find the man who had just taken someone's life. For a short time, Christopher's planning gave him an advantage. He had prepared his escape carefully. But the break in the case came from an unexpected place. Christopher had hidden his escape vehicle in the barn of family friends, Lori and Mike Blazer. When they went into the barn, they noticed a white pickup truck that didn't belong there. Mike Blazer later recalled, "As we walked in, we saw this white pickup truck. At first, they didn't think much of the handwritten note left behind. They knew Christopher. He had talked openly about how much he loved Angela and how upset he was about the court order that kept them apart. But the situation didn't sit right. Lori Blazer explained that the note and the truck felt out of place. It wasn't supposed to be there, she said. That's when I called 911. That call gave investigators crucial information about Christopher's movements and helped narrow down where he might be headed. The note itself also became important evidence, showing that the escape had been planned ahead of time. Christopher was arrested early in the morning on October 9, 2022, after being on the run for about 16 hours. When officers found him, he was still carrying the murder weapon, a 20-gauge shotgun along with ammunition. What Christopher said after his arrest only added to the case against him. He initially claimed the shooting was an accident, but his explanation kept changing. Police quickly noticed the inconsistencies. At one point, Christopher told officers the gun had been leaning near cabinets. He said he reached for a rucksack, it fell, and the gun accidentally fired. But the physical evidence didn't support that version of events. An Iowa State medical examiner later testified that the bullet traveled downward, indicating Christopher was standing and holding the gun when it was fired. Investigators were left asking obvious questions. If this was truly an accident, why take Angela's phone? Why run instead of calling for help? And what kind of help had Angela been asking for and not receiving long before that morning? During questioning, Agent Henningsen said there was clear evidence contradicting Christopher's claim that Angela had only been shot in the arm. The medical examiner confirmed she had been shot in the center of her chest and died instantly. Even with the overwhelming evidence against him, Christopher eventually admitted to shooting Angela, though he continued to insist it was an accident. He was charged with first-degree murder and theft. The trial began at the Jackson County Courthouse in Maquoketa on February 5, 2024. The prosecution built a strong case. They used the 911 call, security camera footage, ballistics evidence, and testimony from Angela's family about the months of escalating abuse. Wendy Buddy, Angela's sister, described the sticky notes and diary entries Angela had kept, which documented her fear. To be honest, Wendy said, I tried not to let her out of my sight. I was trying to keep her safe in the last few months of her life. The jury also learned about Christopher's history of breaking court orders and how the police had failed to enforce the arrest warrant and protection order that could have protected Angela. After 4 days of arguments, the case was sent to the jury. Wendy remembered waiting outside the courthouse. We were just stretching and waiting, wondering how long it would take. When they came back in under an hour, I thought, that's got to be a good sign. On February 13, 2024, the jury returned their verdict. Christopher was found guilty of first-degree murder and theft. When they said it, Wendy recalled, it was just a big sigh of relief. On March 22, 2024, Christopher received the mandatory sentence for first-degree murder in Iowa. Life in prison without the possibility of parole. Angela's family, including her sons and sister, sued the city of Bellevue and its police department in 2024, alleging officers failed to enforce the no-contact order and arrest warrant despite multiple reports, showed favoritism toward Christopher, e.g. due to personal relationships, and that this negligence contributed to her death. The federal lawsuit was dismissed in January 2025, with the judge ruling police owed no specific duty to protect her individually. The family appealed the dismissal, and as of mid-2025, they intended to continue pursuing the case with additional evidence. Stories like this don't just reveal facts, they expose the flaws in systems, the complexities of human nature, and the quiet tragedies that often go unnoticed. Thank you for watching Murder Ledger. We explore real cases, unanswered questions, and the details that refuse to fade. If these stories matter to you, consider subscribing and sharing your thoughts in the comments.